What are your boldest predictions for the 2023 fantasy football season? That and so much more on today's episode of the Launchpad. Joe, go ahead and start us off. What is one of your boldest predictions?
Well, Dave Kluge, it's funny you should ask that because it seems like a bold one to everybody else that I tell it to, but everybody else, I don't know what they're thinking about. And the take is that Bijan Robinson, the glorious young running back of the now Atlanta Falcons, who comes straight over from Texas, hook 'em horns, is going to not only be a fantastic rookie running back, but he is going to be the number one running back in fantasy football this year. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but it's not that crazy, and here's why. Okay, this is not like rookies can't come into the league and do this. Back in Ezekiel Elliott's rookie season, he was RB2 overall. He had a great offensive line. Okay, you want to give me that, all that stuff, and that's all fine and dandy. But if you look at Saquon Barkley's rookie season, he was also RB2 overall. The only reason he wasn't RB1 is some guy named Todd Gurley had 27 million touchdowns that year. So if you say, well, Ezekiel Elliott, good offensive line, much better team, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Saquon Barkley Giants had 5 wins that year. So it doesn't have to be a good team. All it has to do is be an offense that's going to be focused on the run. Arthur Smith is a coach that's focused on the run. This is an offensive line that was very good with the run last year. They got Tyler Algier over 1,000 yards, and now you're getting Bijan Robinson, who does everything well. He blocks, he catches the football, he cuts, he runs, he's fast, he has got football knowledge for days. The kid is a special talent, and I do believe when you look at the rest of this board here, you've got guys like Eckler, you got guys like McCaffrey, all wonderful running backs in their own right, some injury risk, a little bit older. I want the young, fresh legs of Bijan Robinson coming into the league, and the league doesn't know what they're in for, and I am drafting him as the best running back because I think he's going to finish as the best running back in fantasy football. How about them apples?
You know, I love this show because my favorite thing to do is invite guests on my show and then tell them why they're wrong and disagree with them. So that's why this bold prediction show is so much fun for me. Technically, I don't have Bijan ranked as my RB1, but I agree with everything you said. I've got him in as my RB2 right behind McCaffrey, but in the same tier. I mean, they're pretty interchangeable for me for all of the reasons you laid out. You know, I've just got a special little spot in my heart for Christian McCaffrey. I just did a deep dive on him. And the thing that kind of surprised me is that while most efficiency starts to go down as a running back hits McCaffrey's age, somehow he's getting more efficient and better heading into this season. So it's tough for me to put him ahead of McCaffrey, but he can absolutely be the RB1 this year. Coop, what do you have to add? I mean, the kid's a freak talent going to a team that's going to get a ton of usage.
Yeah, I'm actually very disappointed that I can't tell Joey's wrong here. I love to argue myself. You know, people know me from Reddit, stuff like that. But no, on this one, and I've done this in the past. I've gotten smoked. You can go back and check Saquon Barkley as a rookie. I was telling people, I'm not doing first round pick rookie. Are you outside of your mind? But this is the one position where you can't. This is the one position where, in fact, having a guy that's young versus a guy that's 27 is massive at this position.
Mm-hmm.
So
the one other thing, guys, that I'm going to throw out there, there's only been 3 times since I've been doing the Fantasy Black Book series that I've ever put a rookie in the first round in a running back position. It was Ezekiel Elliott, who I put at 10 overall. It was Saquon Barkley, who I put at 8 overall. And then Bijan Robinson right now, who's sitting at 3 overall. Because enough is enough already. I just realized I was being too conservative at a certain point with some of those other guys. And I just think we need to wrap our minds around the fact that some guys can come in the league in certain situations and absolutely just crush. And as great as McCaffrey is, and Kluge's right, I mean, he's a fantastic player. We know that. We did see him get paced a little times. We see sometimes a little Eli Mitchell at the goal line, a little this, a little bit, you know, let's make sure we save him for the playoffs kind of mentality. Atlanta's got nothing to save Bijan for except next Sunday. So, I mean, all they got to do is go out there and play every single week and try to be relevant again. And when you have a young quarterback with Desmond Ridder, you're going to have to rely heavily on the run game. So I'm not worried about Cordero Patterson. I'm not worried about Tyler Algier and his draft capital. No. All I'm worried about is Bijan Robinson, because we take a running back this high in modern day NFL history. That means he's going to play a lot, and he is going to be the offense for the Falcons.
This is how special this player is. I was sitting at a bar in Florida watching the combine on mute with my mom, and we're watching the drills, and she goes, "Who's that guy? That guy's better than all these other." And I was like, do you not know who that is? And she was like, no.
And
I was like,
and now she's writing for Fantasy Alarm.
Now she writes Fantasy Alarm, yeah. And I actually took my job, and now I have to come on these shows, you know, and try and earn it back. But no, my mom's eye test could tell he was the best running back.
And now
That's
we
how
know where
special this
Andrew
player
got
is.
his eye test from. Mama Cooper. That's who we got to thank for it.
I have to focus
yeah, I
on
mean,
stats. I don't have the gift.
we talked about the Falcons last week on the show with Jeff Bell and Corey Spalen. We were talking about how good Kyle Pitts is going to be, how good Drake London is going to possibly be. Now we're talking about Bijan Robinson. So something's got to give here. Either Desmond Ridder is going to have a great fantasy football season, or one of these guys is going to come up short of his ADP. Me right now, the guy that I'm kind of out on at ADP is Drake London. Love Kyle Pitts where he's getting drafted with the tight end designation. Cooper, we won't talk too much about tight ends today, but with Bijan Robinson there as well, I think that you got so much young, good talent on that offense. It's going to be a really fun Falcons team to watch this year. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody into episode 72 of the Launchpad now. As always, joined with two great guests here. Today, we've got Joe Pisapia from Fantasy Pros, and we have Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm. Joe, real quickly, let everyone know where they can find you on social media, when your show airs, the Black Book, all that fun stuff.
It's a lot easier to not find me, but if you really look, if you want to look, obviously you're hosting all the shows on Fantasy Pros for the NFL season and for Major League Baseball on our baseball channel, also on the Betting Pros side as well on YouTube. The new Fantasy Football Black Book is out there. It's got an amazing group of contributors. It's got Derek Brown, Andrew Erickson, Thor Nystrom, Scott Bogman, a whole bunch of other brilliant minds. It's on the Amazon right now, and of course we update our guide, unlike a lot of other guides that just don't have the ability to do such things, including our cheat sheets and things like that. So that's out there. And I also host on Sports Grid TV, which you can watch on Amazon Prime and a lot of other streaming services. Every Sunday, I do the NFL pregame show, 8 a.m. Eastern. And right now we're doing the baseball show at this time of year. So I'm a busy boy at the end of the day, Dave.
Yeah, staying really busy, and that's why it's taking us a while to finally link up. But here we are after years of trying to get it on the books. Finally got a show together here, so thrilled to have you on today, Joe. Over on the right side of my screen, Andrew Cooper, no stranger to this show. You've been on a few times in the past. I think you've either been on like old shows, like pre-Launchpad. You and I were doing shows together. I was on the Lightning Round last week. You're over at Fantasy Alarm, Better Sports Network. Staying busy as well, Andrew. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Always, man. I make it easy for everybody. I'm like, Joe is just live at all times, anywhere, so you can find him live at any moment. With me, I tweet everything out from my account at Coupe Fiasco. Anytime I'm doing a video, anytime I have an article, I tweet that out. So that's the best way to find my stuff. If you want to just find the whole archive of what I got going on, go to Fantasy Alarm or Google Fantasy Alarm, Andrew Cooper. That'll come up. And our draft guide drops today. So big special day for us here. Glad to be on talking with two fellas that I respect and appreciate in this space.
Well, thank you. I don't hear that very often, so really appreciate hearing it from you too. But yeah, it's a great time of year. Everybody's getting their content flowing. It seems like we finally made that switch from dynasty and best ball and all that. It is now redraft season. We're talking redraft takes. Today is 100% focused on 2023 fantasy football takes. Of course, I'm Dave Kluge. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, but be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys so you can see this show and everything else we have to offer: the Audible, the Pretend GM, the Football Guys college football show, and so much more at youtube.com/footballguys. Now, Coop, you just introduced yourself to the audience. Now it's time to make them all hate you. Let's hear your bold prediction for the 2023 season.
Do you want my boldest one, or where are we going here?
Let's start it off with a simmer. We'll get spicier as the show goes on.
Joe hooked everybody
I came in hot. Yeah.
Joe came in scalding hot. But actually, you know what? It's pretty reasonable.
I don't think so. We were all on board with it. So
we're the minority. On a daily
simmer.
basis, people continue to tell me that I'm crazy. And I'm like, all right, but the Falcons are no good. I was like, I don't care. Was Eli Manning any good when the Giants won 5 games? No.
Right.
It's fine.
I will say, yeah. I mean, it's like, but anytime you're saying this guy's going to be the best player at his position,
Sure.
then it's up. Hey, you said that with Justin
Especially when he's
Jefferson last
never
year.
played a down of football in the
That's
NFL.
true as well, yeah.
That's a big lift, but we can get there.
So I'll go with a little. I'll go with my least spicy one. But it's still a take based on ADP. So I've got a guy that I think is going to be a RB1, not the RB1, but who knows? But a RB1. He's currently going off the board at RB 19 or 20 or so, depending where you look. Underdog, it's 19. So I think that's fair enough to say it's bold that he'll outdo that by about 7-8 spots. That's Miles Sanders. And I look at this player. He's been highly efficient throughout his career. A lot of that is due to the line and obviously the RPO with Jalen Hurts. But he's one of maybe 6 or 7 players that for their career have over 400 carries and his yards per carry is over 5. Right now, this year, I think he could take a hit in efficiency, but what he's going to gain is the receiving work that he used to have with Carson Wentz and the goal line work, which was partially taken by Jalen Hurts. If you look at the Eagles last year, Jalen Hurts had the second most carries inside the 5-yard line of any player, behind only Jamal Williams, not any quarterback, any player, not on the team. Jamal Williams is the only player that had more carries inside the 5. So he's taking that goal line work. On the flip side, the Eagles as a team targeted the RB fewer than any other team. The percentage of targets that went to the RB was fewer. The only one that had fewer total targets was the Bears. I mean, if you look at the bottom 3 teams in targets to the running back, it was the Chicago Bears, the Eagles, and the Baltimore Ravens. Joe, what do those teams have in common? Is there a common trend among those? Is it
running the football?
Right. So that's the thing. The quarterback, when he takes the quarterback, it's awesome to have Jalen Hurts on your fantasy team, but for some of those other assets, they can be a bit of a leech for the production elsewhere. So for me, I think Miles Sanders going to a spot where, maybe he doesn't run for 5 yards of carry, but I see a lot more targets in his future. And if there's a pass interference in the end zone, it's Miles Sanders that's punching it in this time instead of Jalen Hurts walking it in. I don't know how. Someone's got to figure out how to stop that, because I mean, the guy is automatic in that area, but
just getting pushed in at this
just getting
point.
pushed. Yeah, people are carrying him in. The
I can't
RPO.
believe the rules committee didn't get rid of that. I thought
know.
for sure that was going to go this year, and it did not. So that's fascinating. So
guess what?
Watch more of it this year.
They're not putting Bryce Young in the middle of a pile and pushing him in the end zone. I can tell you that much.
Dude.
I don't know what Bryce.
Well, they'll only do it once. I don't know where he's going to see.
So you talk about this, Coop, and we've all been playing fantasy football long enough to remember vulture running backs. Remember Mike Tolbert used to come in and steal all those touchdowns from Ryan Matthews,
and then he would do the big boy dance too, which I did love that part. It was bad for fantasy, but he had some moves for a big boy.
And the thing, we don't really see those vulture running backs anymore. Those goal line backs that come in with a specialized role for that. But now we see the quarterbacks, like you said, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, that take away those high value touches. So I agree. He's going to start getting check down work. He's going to see goal line work. And, we saw it if you watch Hard Knocks last year. Deuce Staley pulling out the little hair he had on his head. He was pulling it out because DeAndre Swift was avoiding contact and dancing around. And we saw that early in Miles Sanders' career as well, where he was trying to avoid contact, always looking for the big home run play. And Deuce Staley coached him up into being more of a downhill runner, taking on that contact, finishing the runs. And that's why after he coached him up, he went after him in free agency. So I think that he does have big plans for him, hopefully more than we saw early on in his career in Philadelphia. Love that call out. Sanders is getting drafted pretty far down boards right now, but it seems like he's going to get a lot of volume in this Carolina offense. I'll start off with one of mine that I thought was kind of bold. I ran a poll on Twitter yesterday with all 4 of the rookie wide receivers that were drafted in the first round saying who scores the most points. Of course, I'm talking about Jackson Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and my spicy take was that Jordan Addison was going to be the number 1 scorer for 2023, and unfortunately, everybody agreed with me. So it's really not that spicy of a take. About 40% of the voters said that they also thought Jordan Addison would be the highest scorer. For Dynasty, I think you can make a strong case for any 4 of these guys, but since we're only talking 2023 here, I have Addison easily ranked as my rookie wide receiver 1. He steps into a role that was vacated by Adam Thielen that produced 621 routes run last year, the second most in the NFL of any wide receiver. So there are a lot of vacated targets, routes, opportunities. I know some people scoff at the whole vacated opportunities thing, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to run those routes. This is a terrible defense. It's going to be giving up a lot of points. They play indoors on a fast-paced offense. Jordan Addison is going to see a hefty serving of opportunity in his rookie year. Now, I like KJ Osborne, but as the season goes on, I expect Jordan Addison to take over as that wide receiver too. And there are some red flags with his profile. He's a little bit undersized. He's got a slight frame. He was a late declare. He's not all that fast, but he is just a technician as a route runner. And he's got that natural ability to get open, much like Justin Jefferson. Obviously, he's smaller and not quite as fast, but Justin Jefferson is going to be taking on double teams. He's going to be pulling the safety over to his side of the field. And Jordan Addison is going to have a lot of opportunities to get open. So again, I thought this was a spicy take. A lot of people agree with me, which was very disheartening to hear. But what do you guys think? Is Jordan Addison the wide receiver 1 in this class, or is JSN, because he has the draft capital, is he the guy that you guys are looking at, or is it somebody else?
I'll say C. It's Quentin Johnston, and that's because Mike Williams never plays. And at the end of the day, and that's not a hot take, folks. That's just a fact. In the words of Paul Heyman, that's not a prediction; it's a spoiler. That's what I'm talking about. Where you get a player like Quentin Johnston, who he is a bigger, stronger guy, and he does have the speed. He showed you everything at TCU I think he could possibly ask to see. And he doesn't have to be, the super elite level Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson kind of guy. This offense wants to throw the football. And Keenan Allen, I think, as long as he is healthy, he proved last year when he was healthy on the field, he is still a very good fantasy wide receiver. But Mike Williams is just never present. And I think that's something where if you look at those two guys together, I think you see a lot of the same qualities where Quentin Johnson could easily, with his skill set, get dropped into what that other role is and really be a huge touchdown guy. And I think that's the thing too, that, if you're going to be the number one guy, I think those touchdowns are really going to have to be a big part of that. And I think that's where Quentin Johnson can really come in, because that's never quite been Keenan Allen's big game.
Right.
But at the same time, if you look at Addison, Jefferson's going to get a lot of attention there. Hawkinson's going to get a lot of attention there. That move for Hawkinson, to me, that kind of changed the dynamic of that offense a little bit. But at the same time, Jackson Smith-Njigba, as talented as he is, I just don't see Tyler Lockett all of a sudden fading away like in this. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Tyler Lockett, whatever. And he's all the way down this trough. And I'm like, if you're going to let him go down there, I'm going to take him every single time. DK Metcalf still might have another gear there. And he's been a guy that can get you those touchdowns. So the only thing that holds me back with Addison is a touchdown possibility. But Cooper, what do you think about that? Because to me, it's Quentin Johnston who could step in. One Mike Williams injury really opens him up into that offense, and he could run right roughshod through the rest of the league as the best rookie wideout.
I mean, he's the double handcuff, really, because, Keenan Allen missed half the season last year.
Yeah.
Like, if you like handcuffs, we got the double handcuff right there.
Right.
And
more outs, like they say in poker, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. You want the both sides of the river, right? For me, when I look at JSN, I already have a career trajectory comp for him, which is Chris Godwin, where I see you look at the Bucks, they had Mike Evans on one side and Deshaun Jackson, and they bring in Chris Godwin, and Djax, even being an older player, was still able to hold him off for a little bit until year 2, and then finally 3, when he went from being the slot guy to being the flanker in 2 wide receiver sets and the slot on the other snaps, right? So I think that's what we have here, where it's going to be DK Metcalf at split end. It's going to be Tyler Lockett as the other guy in 2 wide receiver sets. And JSN is going to play, but he's going to play as the third wide receiver, kind of maybe even like a Tyler Boyd that comes in just to play the slot, comes out for the 2 tight end sets. So I'm with you. You can even, I personally still rank JSN as my dynasty wide receiver 1 because I think he's talented. But in redraft, which this is a redraft show, see you later dynasty, see you later best ball. We're talking redraft. We're talking real fantasy football today. And in that format, I think guys like Jordan Addison immediately, as Kluge pointed out, has the opportunity. And Quentin Johnston is this close to it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you can't, and I will not rest until Jordan Addison's ADP is higher than JSN's, because
he's an auto draft. Like, it is so crazy. I see somebody take JSN and I go, all right, next pick for me, I'm taking Jordan Addison.
And you pointed out, though, the crazy part is that we get on here and everyone I ask, they don't say JSN for 2023. Like everyone I talk to saying that. So who are these people out there? Are they robots?
Well, yeah. I think that you're getting the residual draft coverage where everyone's talking about him, he's the number 1 taken, he's the number 1 guy in terms of the safest, all that stuff. So it seeps into their brain. But Tyler Lockett's got 1 more year on his deal. I'm going to use Tyler Lockett up and then let him go, and then next year. So theoretically, yes, but we're talking, like as you were saying, about 2023. And 2023, it's all about who can be productive, what's the easiest path. And, to me, he has the 3rd easiest path. I mean, you could even make a fun argument about Zay Flowers too, which, I mean, because I love, you want to talk about 2 polar opposite personalities. I at the draft, especially, you had Jordan Addison with his money suit, and then there's Zay Flowers with the inside of his suit with all these pictures of his family. And you're like, well, which guy do you want on your football team? And I want Zay Flowers personally. I want that kind of dude. I want that mentality, dude. And I can't wait to see how it all shakes out. But there's absolutely, because of the defense that you pointed out, Kluge, Vikings did not make any big adjustments to that defense year over year. So there's no reason to think that Addison can't get there. But
they did make adjustments to the defense. They let 4 of their starters walk.
I was going to say, no, let me
just made it worse.
They haven't made any good positive.
It's like when you need to, it's like making an adjustment to your pants where you just pull them down. Hold on, let me adjust this for a second, right?
All right, so some good rookie wide receiver talk there. But, Joe, I'm going to throw it back over to you. Let's hear another one of your bold predictions for the 2023 season.
All right, here's one. This is a guy that's being drafted basically as the 50th wide receiver off the board, and I don't understand why. And unless the calculus changes here in the next couple weeks in terms of them adding somebody else, it's Elijah Moore, who is one of the newest Cleveland Browns. being a wide receiver 2. And he's being drafted right now, like I said, wide receiver 50. And what's so interesting right now is he's being drafted right around Rashad Bateman, who hasn't played in 2 years, Michael Thomas, who hasn't played in 2 years, Jameson Williams, who's not going to play for the first 6 games of the season and barely saw the field last year, Odell Beckham, who didn't play at all last year. You see a theme going here with the guys around him. And then there's Elijah Moore, who everybody, including me, was very excited about going into last year. And then Zach Wilson ruins everything, and the Jets quarterback play is so bad that nobody could really be good. I mean, Garrett Wilson had some great flashes at times and some big splash games, but there was no consistency at that position. And if you look right now at the way the Browns are currently constructed, there's no Kareem Hunt catching these short passes anymore. That's gone. Nick Chubb is the only guy. There's nobody else in that backfield that I really feel confident is going to fill that gap. And who's he got to worry about? Donovan Peoples-Jones, who also, by the way, is on a contract year. And Elijah Moore is the guy they traded for. I think Elijah Moore is going to work in the slot a ton. And if he does work in the slot, that's where you get those really valuable targets. I remember Tags used to always talk about this too. You want these slot wide receivers in these full PPR leagues because those guys are just going to continue to just build and build and build and build. And every week you're going to look up and they're going to have a high floor. And if you add that touchdown, they have a high ceiling. And he's got an alpha in Cooper on the other side working. So he's going to have a lot of single coverage, going to have mismatch coverage. I understand people like Njoku, and that's all fine and dandy. But Elijah Moore has an opportunity to well outperform his ADP. So I'm looking at him as a potential guy that people are kind of sleeping on right now. And unless something changes, I'm going to be very much on him in the 2023 draft season.
Now, I will say this, Joe. I asked Elijah Moore or Donovan Peoples-Jones on my Twitter, and Donovan Peoples-Jones' uncle responded and said it was him. So,
can't argue that.
If I was his uncle, I'd say it was him too. I want to get invited to Thanksgiving at his house.
That's right, dude.
I mean, he's probably paying my rent or something,
Now, I thought last year with Donovan Peoples-Jones, I was touting Donovan Peoples-Jones in the offseason, but I didn't expect him to see a complete change in his role from what we saw for the first 2 years. The first 2 years, he was primarily a downfield threat. I mean, that's all he had was straight line speed, blow the top off the defense, get open downfield and make something happen. And then last year, they were using him on these short and intermediate routes, and that's not really what his game is tailored for. So I think that it was very intentional for them to go out and get Elijah Moore, because then they can put Donovan Peoples-Jones back in the flanker role where he can stretch the defense. And then they can have Elijah Moore working those underneath routes where he's going to get peppered with targets. So I completely agree with you, Joe. I really like that call out. I like this whole Browns offense. I'm just really sipping the Kool-Aid in Cleveland right now, whether it's Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb. I want everybody in this offense because they're so suppressed in value, the entire offense right now. But Elijah Moore is a guy that I think could smash his ADP completely with you.
Think about those names too, guys. Think about the names that I just mentioned that were in that same ADP territory. I mean, there's just so many questions there. And then you got a guy that we were all so excited about last year because of the talent and the flashes we saw with terrible quarterback play. And even if Deshaun Watson just gets back to being, a pretty good quarterback, he doesn't have to be all elite anymore necessarily. I mean, why can't Elijah Moore just absolutely crush for this ADP? Meanwhile, all these guys either haven't seen the field or aren't going to see the field in 2023. It makes no sense.
Visceral reaction to getting burned last year. So now,
you get all these big names. Thomas is a big name. Odell's a big name, right? All these. I mean, I love Jameson Williams, but I got to keep it real. He's going to miss half of the fantasy football regular season. That's a lot.
I'll tell you what. If it's going to be anything that holds Elijah Moore back, it will seemingly be the same thing that held him back and got him moved from the Jets, which was attitude.
100%. And sometimes being it knocks that out of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing, and this should, every agent should be going to their player and let them know this, right? If you're going to complain, at least, especially if you're going to complain about getting the ball, at least wait until it's after you lose a game. Elijah Moore came out after a 3-game win streak. They were a 3-game win streak, and he's like, I need the ball more. It's like, dude, if you just waited one more. Yeah, just wait one more week.
Zach Wilson last year and Joe Flacco last year.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I would be complaining too. I mean, I'd be pretty upset.
Wait one more week though, Joe, and your team loses a game, and now you say, we would have won if I got the ball more. Yeah, you don't complain when you're winning. You don't complain when you're winning. That's where I'm at.
Look at where Robert Saleh came from. He came from San Francisco, and we just saw Kyle Shanahan do this 2 years ago with Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk had a bad attitude, and he was in the doghouse for almost an entire season. And I think that was the same exact thing Saleh was trying to do with Elijah Moore, but where it lit a fire under Brandon Ayuk and got him playing better football, Elijah Moore just kind of turned sour on the team, and they had to ship him out. So, you kind of looking at the coaching tendencies here, I understand what Saleh was trying to do, but hopefully a change of scenery can help Elijah Moore because the kid is just dripping with talent, and we saw it as a rookie. We just didn't see it last year. Coop, throwing it back over to you. Give me another bold prediction.
All right, I got one, dude. This is a guy, I love this player. I'm a tight end enthusiast, to say the least. So I laid off the David Njoku. I let you have your Elijah Moore. All right. So I will come in with a tight end here. This might be a hot take to some, but the numbers are there for it to be easily possible. And maybe his floor is low, but I think that Chig Okonkwo could be a top 5 tight end this season, right? You look at the way I look at it with these guys that are coming up, the younger guys, is you want to look at what they do when they're on the field and picture a world where you should add more snaps to that, right? We did it with Mark Andrews, where he came out, he was playing as a young player, was playing all his snaps in the slot. He was behind like Nick Boyle and Hayden Hurst in snaps. He wasn't blocking on any pass plays ever. He was running every route. He was running high A dot routes. As a rookie, he had 35% snap share, only caught like 30 passes. But we said to ourselves, what if he plays more? Well, the next year, he actually only went up to 40% snaps and he took a big jump. But when he went to the full snap share, he crushed. I look at Chig Okonkwo, and he ran a 4.5 240, the same as George Kittle, who obviously leads the world in 7. He's the only tight end that ever has a 70-yard play, ever, right? Like, so, you have that. He in yards per route run, he had the second highest of any player behind only Tyreek Hill. Somebody told me that, and I was like, that can't be right. It is. So, like, he's got all that behind the scenes stuff. All we need now is for him to take the step forward. And last year, Austin Hooper didn't even lead that team in tight end snaps. It was Jeff Swaim. Both those fellas are gone now. They're leaning on him, right? Like, it's time. Like, if he doesn't do it now, I know they did draft a kid out of Cincinnati, Josh Wiley, but like, if he doesn't do it now, then he never will. But if you look at like Mark Andrews, when you just took all this high efficiency and added that on there, right? This guy had 3 40+ yard plays last year, which again, George Kittle in 2016 was the last tight end to do that. Like, tight ends just don't break off big chunk plays. This guy does. So if he can be a top 2 target on that team after Treylon Burks, I see no reason why he can't be a top 5 tight end in this league this year. I have him ranked at tight end 8 just because I can't bring my feeble little mind to put him ahead of guys like Goddard. Like, it's so tough for me to put him ahead of. I like Waller because he could lead his team, but like, I don't see why, if he is a top target of his team, he can't surpass some of these guys like Kittle himself, who now has more target competition, or Dallas Goedert. So there is injuries are a thing as well. So I have him at 8, and I'm only drafting a tight end at 8 or 7 if I think he can be top 5. That's this guy. Let's go.
So peek behind the curtain. We're recording the show on Thursday afternoon. Not going to come out on YouTube for a couple days. Podcast will be out Friday morning. But big domino to fall right now. DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent. He took a meeting with Tennessee. If DeAndre Hopkins signs with Tennessee, are you going to change your stance?
Cry my little eyes out. Yeah. Oh my God. I'll change my stance. I'll change my Twitter handle.
I'm going to cry too. I'm going to cry for DeAndre Hopkins because he has to play with Ryan Tannehill.
I think we'll all just meet up and have like a candle.
Talk about ruining everything.
Vigil for everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Ruin Hopkins, you ruin Chig, you ruin everything.
There's going to be like 3 people out there that thought Kyle Phillips is going to do something, and they'll be sad. So yeah, we don't want that. Like,
let's cross our fingers and hope that before Sunday morning, DeAndre Hopkins does not sign with Tennessee.
Yeah, if he does sign before then we'll just have this whole section
out.
Just be redacted.
It'll just be a beep for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, you won't be able to find me, dude.
I mean, Chig has 2 things for me. Like, I like looking at the numbers, and he's got all the underlying metrics that you talked about, the yards per route run, targets per route run, all that, but also just the eye test. Like, you watch this guy play, he looks like a man among boys, and he's a little bit undersized for a tight end, but the way he plays, he doesn't look like an undersized tight end. He looks like a gigantic slot receiver. So completely love that call out there. I mean, him and Treylon Burks, I don't want to make the comp to Drake London and Kyle Pitts, but when you look at 2 wildly big and athletic and fast, young and ascending talents, they're kind of copying the same plan that they're laying out in Atlanta. So like that call out. Joe, before we move on to another bold prediction, anything you'd like to add about Chig Okonkwo?
I like Chiggy. Chig is, I'm the, great or late tight end kind of situation. Like, I like to take, and chances are I end up just taking shots later on because I'm a heavy wide receiver early person when I draft. But the only thing for me that I worry about him kind of get is that you've got to get probably about 85 targets, to get as a top 5 tight end. Probably.
He's 90. Every tight end, I got one stat for you here, Joe. Every tight end going back to Randy McMichael. 90, right? It's every tight end going back to Randy McMichael in 2003 in PPR has had either 90 targets or 10 touchdowns. Every one. And half PPR, there's one exception.
Not insane. Who's the one exception?
In half PPR, the one
Gary
exception
Barker.
was COVID year. Mark Andrews he missed 2 games. He had 88 targets. So in half PPR, it's 88. Yeah. So you're
in
right
my
there.
mind, I'm watching, I'm listening to you, and in my mind, I'm thinking, well, he's got to have somewhere around 85 targets or something like that in order to get there. And Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson are all going to do that. Kittle's probably going to do that. And then you've also, for him to finish as a top 5, that means Pitts doesn't bounce back. It means Goddard isn't healthier. It means Waller doesn't ascend at all, where there's plenty of opportunity. But again, he's a hot mess in terms of injury too. So I get that. So there's a chance that he sneaks in there and claims that 5 spot. It's not impossible. There are targets to go around. There's touchdown equity to go around in that offense too. It's just a matter of, does anybody else step up too? Does Evan Ingram repeat what he did last year? I doubt it, but it's not impossible. So it's an interesting one. Again, I think Coop is onto something though. You don't have to draft him like that. So if you think he's got upside for anything more than the ADP, and I think he does, then you can target him as one of 2 tight ends. What I like to do is like grab 2 guys that have upside, grab him, grab Dalton Kincaid, see if somebody works out. And at the end of the day, that works for me. All you got to do is just maximize those matchups as much as you can every week.
That's the funny thing about,
everybody's trying to like pave their own way in this industry. And Coop said, I'm going to take the hardest to predict, most volatile position.
I love it.
I am just going to focus on that. Like just setting yourself up for failure every single year, but somehow you just keep nailing year after year after year, hitting all these sleepers. You were on Evan Ingram last year. You were telling everyone to sell Zach Ertz when he was balling out. So I don't know what you're doing, what ball you're looking at.
He's the tight end whisperer.
You got to figure it out with tight ends.
Yeah, it's Howard Bender was the original tight end whisperer, brought me into the brotherhood. So that's a fantasy alarm magic, dude. And to Joe's point, that if you have a guy like Chig that's going off the board tight end 12 or 13 and you rank him at 8 like I do, you're gonna have him in every league, right? So it's not a matter of like you don't have to go out of your way to get him. If you like I say he can be top 5, you don't have to draft him at 5,
right?
You can get him at so it's like that's the magic of these.
He's currently tight end 12, so
right.
you don't have to draft him ahead of anybody. You don't want to,
you draft him in the 11th round instead of the 13th.
Unless you're playing with me, then you got to draft him. Then it's a knife fight, right?
There it is.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and talk about my next bold prediction. And first of all, I want to apologize to repeat listeners because I've been talking about this a lot this offseason, but I got Russell Wilson bouncing back as a top 10 quarterback. And I mean, really, for me, I don't want to try to play psychologist here or anything, but looking at it, he was with a new team, new coach, new city, new scheme. I mean, that's the first time he's ever had to do that in his NFL career. And he had a career low touchdown rate, career high in interception rate. I just can't help but look at both of those and think that they're outliers. And this team has done everything they can to try and set him up for success. Now, they beefed up their offensive line with Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers, brought in Samaje Perine to help him because he doesn't have that ability as a rusher anymore. Now he's got a guy who can catch these checkdowns out of the backfield. Tim Patrick should be back and healthy, a name that keeps flying under the radar, but has so much respect in that Denver locker room and realistically could be the number 2 wide receiver behind Courtland Sutton. But Courtland Sutton is also another year removed from that ACL now. They traded up to get Marvin Mims in the 2nd round this year. Jerry Jeudy and Greg Dulcich both showed some promise there. And then, of course, tied all together with Sean Payton. I mean, this is a team that has a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball and finally has a coach that I don't think it can get worse than what Nathaniel Hackett was doing last year. The other thing I'll say about Russell Wilson is dating back prior to last year, he was a top 10 quarterback for 8 straight seasons. And out of those 8 seasons, 4 of those 8 seasons, he was a top 3 quarterback. I don't think that he just forgot how to play football. He's 34 years old. You don't just fall off the age cliff that aggressively at 34 years old. I think he's still got a few years left in the tank, and I'm really hopeful that Sean Payton can bring out the best in him. So right now, he's getting drafted as QB 18, which is lower than where he finished last year. So somehow people are predicting that Russ takes a step backwards despite all these additions. I think that Russ returns to form this year as the top 10 quarterback that we have seen for the last decade. Guys, am I crazy here? Still holding on to hope for Russ?
Yes.
I'm hoping Joe disagrees because we're going too easy on each other on this one. But
I disagree. Go ahead, Coop. Yeah. You can support some more, and then
I'll just quickly say that I just personally I look at coaching does matter, and you look at Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer versus Trevor Lawrence with Doug Peterson. It can't turn around that quickly. So I'm in the camp where I don't think this is crazy. I wish I did. I'm going to throw my next take. I thought you guys will be one that you can all disagree with. And then we'll
good. Well, here's the thing. I think there's room for improvement here with Russell Wilson for sure, obviously. But it's funny. One of the things that you said was, last year so much, knew through at him. there's more new being thrown at him again, which is a new head coach, a new OC, a new playbook, some new personnel. So it's not like, oh, it's year 2 and we're settling in and we're figuring out a complicated offense. No, this is year 1. And Sean Payton is a fantastic head coach. And if you want somebody to fix a quarterback, I don't know if he's on the short list for me. If you wanted to get somebody in there who could really, fix him. And I'm sure that's why he wanted to go to the Broncos, because he saw it as something, hey, that's a young enough guy with talent enough. We can make this all work. And they have a good defense and all those things. But to finish top 10, you've already got your Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Lamar, Fields, Herbert. Trevor Lawrence is ranked 8th. He finished 8th last year. Now he's got Calvin Ridley. Deshaun Watson with a full season, you're hoping gets back to normal. Now he's got top 5 upside, but he's going as the 9th quarterback. Then you've got Dak at 10. And then you've got some prolific potential passers, like, and I know it ain't always pretty, but Kirk Cousins is going to throw for well over 4,000 yards. So is Jared Goff. Anthony Richardson could rush enough and score enough rushing touchdowns where, from a fantasy value perspective in terms of points, look at what Justin Fields did last year. He didn't throw the ball 3,000 yards, but you know what? He finishes as a top fantasy quarterback. So many things would have to happen, and you'd also have to have no Geno Smith kind of thing happen again where nobody emerges, and Tua, if he stays healthy with all those weapons. So I just think, can he get back to be a QB1? Maybe. Top 10, I think, is pushing it, because then all those other guys that are in that periphery would have to underperform or underwhelm. And I don't think that's all going to happen along with Wilson playing good enough to overcome them all in points. So better, improved, yes. Top 10, that I have a problem with.
Hey, Kluge, I was counting with my fingers there while Joe was doing the quarterbacks, and I ran out of fingers pretty quickly, bud. We got to 10 pretty quickly there, and then he made some good arguments for a few more guys after that.
Yeah, so what I'm looking at, in that tier outside of the big guys that we talked about, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Anthony Richardson, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, I think that that's where Russ fits in, and he has displayed that upside before when he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks for 8 straight years. So for him to bounce back, he could have another 3,800-yard, 25 touchdown season like we saw pretty much his baseline throughout his time in Seattle, and that right there is good enough for a QB1 finish. The scary part, of course, is he doesn't probably have that top 3 upside anymore. He doesn't have the legs that really push him to those elite finishes anymore. But I'm pretty confident in him finishing as a top 10 quarterback this year with this hopefully revamped Sean Payton offense. Now, guys, I know we prepped for more talk today, but we got off the rails and we were talking and disagreeing with each other. And unfortunately, we are running out of time here. So I think we're going to have to scrap our last ones unless you guys just want to.
No, we can push if you want to. No. Let's give the people what they want. Come on, Kluge.
Let's hear it then. Let's.
I haven't teased one, so we got to go. I'm here.
Could even teased one. So who wants to go first? Go ahead. Come on, let's go. We got time.
Let's keep the structure going. Joe.
All right, you asked for it. Here we go. This is a hot take because this guy didn't play last year because he was battling cancer. So just from that standpoint alone, I think it's a lot to ask of a young player to come back and now have his second chance at a rookie season. But John Metchie III, I believe, is going to lead the Houston Texans in targets and receiving yards this year. And CJ Stroud is a pretty darn good young quarterback prospect. And I don't think there should be any pressure on him at all. I really don't. There's no expectations except just be better than awful. I mean, that's pretty much what you've seen out of the Texans the last few years. And Metchie, if you go back and, I'm old enough to remember a couple years ago when, he played for Alabama and he was the guy that moved the chains. Jameson Williams was the guy that took the top off the defense. Jameson Williams was the guy that broke teams' backs. But the guy that you went to for the first downs, the guy that moved the chains, the guy that was really consistent every single game was John Metchie. And I think that's exactly what a young player is going to look for a quarterback, and that kind of consistent wide receiver. So to me, Metchie is a guy that has that opportunity. He has a path. All that makes sense. I know they brought in, the tight end to possibly be that guy too, but I don't think Schultz is going to be that guy. I don't think Nico Collins is that dude. I think at the end of the day, we're all going to look up and go, wow, what a great story. John Metchie coming back in 2023 and being the dude that just moves the chains. And you know what? In the PPR league, as your 4th or 5th wide receiver, I think you could do worse potentially as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, this guy who was drafted ahead of George Pickens, ahead of Alec Pierce, ahead of
forget that.
Moore. Yeah, people forget. Take a year off, and all of a sudden everyone forgets about you. So, yeah. I mean, I'm a Nico Collins guy. So you're trying to.
A lot of people are
wrong guy.
But,
I love.
But here's the thing with Nico. Here's the only thing with Nico is skill set wise, Metchie fits better with the young quarterback trying to just kind of learn and not screw up. You know what I mean? Like the routes that he's going to run.
He's a contested catch guy, and rookie quarterbacks
Right.
typically don't trust receivers to make contested
Right.
catches.
Especially
So
young quarterbacks
Mitchie's the
aren't
guy that's gonna
trusted
be
to
on an
throw
island.
those balls. That's the problem. You know,
Mhm.
so Metchie's going to be that guy underneath that I think could really cause havoc. And I think he's going to be one of these guys that might even be undrafted in shallow leagues. And I guarantee you in the month of September, he's going to be one of those added guys. It just feels like that could be the thing.
Well, I have two problems with this take. One, you put us in the spot where now we got to argue against the guy coming back from cancer, which is a great.
I figured that would be a tough one.
First of all, Joe, that's a veteran move. So we're all rooting for John Metchie. Let's clarify that, right? We can root for Nico Collins and John Metchie. Two is that you said your take is that he's going to lead Houston in targets and receiving yards, which is great. But, for years I would draft Greg Little because I figured he would lead the Browns in targets and receiving yards. And he would finish like wide receiver 75, right? Like of the top 20 wide receivers last year, 10 of them came from only 5 teams, right? You got like the Bengals of the world and the Seahawks that are producing all the fantasy relevant guys. The best wide receiver on the Texans might be terrible. So,
But Greg Little played at Mississippi. This guy played at Alabama. Just want to say.
All right. I'm just saying. Yeah. Well,
no, you're not wrong.
Let's make a good point.
And I'm not one of these guys.
You might be right, and he might not be fantasy relevant. Like he could be the best guy on the worst team.
And you might be right as well. That at the end of the day, it's not enough to be fantasy relevant, and that's why specifically I said in those PPR formats, as a guy that you could throw in there, can he get you 10 points on bye weeks? You might be able to. And don't forget about him because it seems like everybody has, and I don't think they should.
Yeah, and maybe CJ Stroud is just much better than people think. I don't know why. It seems like every year there's one guy that like the general public just turns against, and it was CJ
my
Stroud.
Number one, on betting pros this year, my number one draft bet was for him to go as the second quarterback, taking over all this stuff. And all that Will Levis stuff happened, and I kept retweeting that video, and I said, look, everybody, this is never going to happen. Will Levis is never going to be selected over CJ Stroud. There is no way that we get to a point in the NFL where that happens. And you know what? Thank goodness it didn't. And thank goodness that happened. CJ Stroud is a pretty good body of work.
Just like there's the one guy that everybody just hates for no reason, like CJ Stroud. We've also got this like Ponzi scheme quarterback every year. It was Will Levis this year, Malik Willis the year before. That's the guy we got to start paying attention to. Who's the guy that we think is going top 5 that's not even a first round pick? Now, Coop, let's go on to yours. You teased it a little bit. Let's hear it.
All right, I'm going to leave the hot part of the take for the end of it. But let's talk about Michael Thomas, right? And here's the thing is that everybody initially, or the easy low-hanging fruit take is he hasn't played football for 3 years and he's not going to. But when you really go back and look at it, he hurt his ankle at the beginning of 2020, but he played. He came back, and people called him a diva. He came back like 3 different times, including the playoffs to play. Is that a diva move to come back and play the 2 playoff games on an injured ankle? The problem was he waited too long to get the surgery, missed all of 2021. But last year, he did play. So we're talking about, he played in 2020 in the playoffs. He played last year. He played 3 games. In those games, obviously it's a small sample size. I'm going to be the one that admits it. You can't really just project. He scored 3 touchdowns in 3 games, so I can't say that he would have scored 17, right? But I will. But he's a guy that he also was racking up receptions like he did before. Like he would have been on pace for 90 receptions, which is what DK Metcalf had. It was top 10. So like there's a real world where this guy still is one of the best wide receivers in the world. The Saints themselves are betting between 10 and $15 million on it. So I can bet some money on it at ADP. And I would be willing to go as far as to say the bold part of my take that with a new quarterback, we don't know who he's going to like best. And there's a possibility that Michael Thomas actually outscores Chris Olave in fantasy football in 2023.
I didn't think you were actually going to say it, but you did. Now that we've lost the entire audience. No, I mean,
I was trying to hide. I was trying to hide it at the end of the. I just got to sneak it in there, you know.
Maybe your instincts were right. You should have ended the show earlier.
just cut it before I say the part where everyone's going to say it. Just
but crazy things happen every year.
Not crazy.
I did this bold prediction show last year with Justin Boone and Corey Spala. And Corey Spala said Jared Goff is going to be a top 5 quarterback. And the response that Justin Boone and I had was very similar to the response that Joe and I had right now. But guess what? middle of the season when Jared Goff was a top 5 quarterback. I clipped that. I gave
Hey,
his
man.
flowers. I gave him to Corey. So,
Michael
that's
Thomas
the
is
point
not
of the show, is to
impossible.
go against the grain. It's
But it's
not
not impossible.
impossible.
This was a guy who was the best wide receiver on the planet for 2 years, right? In terms of fantasy. So, I love that you guys both did the same reaction. Like, I know. But the problem,
Exactly. Yeah.
the thing with football is, especially when you have these feet injuries and things like that, they crush these wide receivers over time. And then they get older. And then, it's just the nature of the beast. Is it impossible that Chris Olave ends up behind Michael Thomas and Michael Thomas comes back and rebounds and we're like, oh my God, comeback player of the year? No, of course not. It's in the, as Derek Brown, my colleague, likes to say, the range of outcomes. But in terms of the investment, I'm somebody that made a small investment in a couple of key leagues in Michael Thomas last year because you're getting such a discount. I was like, okay, let me take it and see. And for 2 weeks, I felt like a genius. And then the rest of the year, I was like, why did you do that, you stupid idiot? Why did you do that? Because it's hard to take players that have health issues going into seasons because there's going to be enough of a injury attrition to your roster already that's coming for you, that if you're putting yourself behind with those kind of takes and those kind of picks, it can lead to you being behind the rest of the pack. So I love the boldness of it. I think it's fun. I don't think it's impossible at all. Ahead of Olave, that's spicy, my friend. That's
Whether
muy
you were
caliente.
on or off Michael Thomas last year, you could claim victory. Because after he got hurt, you could say, I told you so. And before he got hurt, you could say, yeah, he's the same guy that he used to be. And injuries are fluky and tough to predict. So,
and it was a different injury. It was a different injury. It was a toe injury, and it wasn't even the big toe. It was the second toe. All right, I'm not a toe doctor by any means.
You need that toe. You just
toe
take it
connected
off.
to the
Where's
foot,
Ronnie
the
Lott?
to
Can we
the
get him to come
ankle,
and take
that's
some
connected to the
off,
knee.
dude?
I think Jordan Reed actually did do that at one point, just have the bones taken out of his foot, which is wild business. But I don't know. I think it's entirely possible. And I told Kluge coming into this, he said he was going muy caliente with his third pick. I went full electrical fire with mine. So
Hey,
Michael Thomas over Chris Olave. Now you can come in for a soft landing to end the show.
Yeah, and I'll say with my chest, I'm not going to sneak it in at the end of the take like a
it was a full dude. Clip the whole thing.
I got Marquise Brown finishing as a top 20 wide receiver this year. And I know it's crazy because Kyler Murray's hurt. And I mean, that's the elephant in the room. And I think that's why he's being suppressed to where he is right now, getting drafted as a wide receiver 3. But if you look at Marquise Brown's time in Baltimore, he was just a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. The yards per route run, targets per route run, efficiency, all those metrics were screaming that this guy was a dynasty buy, that he was a changed situation from blowing up in fantasy value. And then we saw it on a very small sample last year, but over the 6 games where Marquise Brown and Kyler Murray were healthy together, 10.8 targets per game. He was the wide receiver 5 in scoring behind Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Tyreek Hill. He was on pace for 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. And now DeAndre Hopkins is out of the picture. The stage is set for him to be a target hog. And right now you're getting a great discount because of Kyler Murray's ACL tear. And some people are saying he could be back as early as September. Some people are saying that he's going to miss the entire year. But I don't think that there's any chance that Kyler Murray doesn't come back at some point this offseason, because there's kind of 2 scenarios here. Either they're contending and he's going to want to come back, or they aren't contending and the team is going to want to get him on the field to show off how his knee is holding up so they can put him on the trade market and draft Caleb Williams. So I don't think that there's any chance where he's not going to play. So overall, I think that he's got the talent to finish as a top 20 wide receiver. But more than anything, when Kyler Murray returns at some point in the season, then we're looking back at that top 5, that really elite upside. And that's when games matter most, when you're trying to get into the playoffs, when you're trying to win playoff games. So Marquise Brown is a guy, like you said with Chig, Coop, you want him on all of your teams. That's how I am with Marquise Brown. I don't want him slipping past me in a single draft. I'm trying to get this guy on every single fantasy team I can.
They're going to be the worst team in the league, and it's not going to be close, though, just so you know.
Yeah, and it's going to be and being a bad team oftentimes leads to a lot of pass attempts. And if he's taking
look at us going after John Metchie and Marquise Hollywood Brown and all these things. Right. Here's the thing about Brown that's just interesting too. Looking back on some of his stats, his highest finish ever was in half PPR back in 2021. He was wide receiver 22. He had 146 targets that year in order to get there. And he still just barely cracked 1,000 yards, 1,008. He only caught 91 of those 146. And that's always been my thing with Marquise Hollywood Brown, is that he has always been a mistake wide receiver to me. He ends up having, guys fall down covering him, guys slip up. He catches a ball, makes one move, guy's not where he's supposed to be. Next thing you know, it's a bigger play. So he's been able to really make a lot of his athleticism. He's going to have to because the quarterback play is going to be what, like Colt McCoy and and
Clayton Tune.
others. And Clayton Tune, which is one of my favorite quarterback names ever. I love
Yeah.
Clayton Tune. But if and when Kyler Murray comes back, I don't know if he's going to be the savior for him either. You're not wrong in the sense that the volume could potentially be there, but his skill set has not shown that he is a conversion guy of that volume. That's my problem here. And then the touchdowns would have to make up for it for him to get there. So Cooper, that's my big hurdle here too, as you mentioned about how bad of a team that is. I'm talking about Metchie. Maybe he can get 120 targets and he'll catch 105 of them. Like if you throw him the ball 120 times, that's not going to happen with Hollywood.
That's a good point. And, I'm happy we did the show the way we did. Kind of started off with the more mild takes.
Yeah.
Everyone drops their walls a little bit, gets nice and comfortable, and then we just
Then we
eviscerate
just
each other's
let each
takes
other
at the
have
end.
it.
That's what the whole point of
That's
this
good.
show was. And yeah, I mean, it is a spicy take. And the thing is, Marquise Brown, he's at his best when he's running deep downfield and catching those long balls. And I don't know if Colt McCoy and Clayton Tune are going to be able to get those to him. But I think that if he's able to recreate that top 5 outcome, it doesn't matter what he does through the first 6, 8, 10 weeks of the season. If he's putting up 18, 20 points a game down the stretch, he's going to be able to back into a wide receiver 20 or better finish. That's my hope. But hey, these are bold predictions. So hopefully we can come back in a
There you
few
go.
months now and pat ourselves on the back for getting at least one of these right. But before we sign off, one more time, Joe, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
You can hit me up at Joe Pisapia 17 and check out the Black Book on Amazon right now for 2023. And of course, all the stuff on Fantasy Pros and Sports Grid. This was fun, Kluge. Glad we finally got to make this work. And Cooper, it was
Yeah.
fun hanging out with you as well. You boys have nice, spicy takes. It's very good.
Coop, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, on Twitter at Coop A Fiasco. That's Coop, letter A, Fiasco. And I tweet out everything I do. I'll tweet out this podcast when it's up. So that's just the easiest way to get all my stuff. And again, boys, it's been a pleasure. We got to do this again.
Of course. And I'm Dave Kluge. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. Do all of the things, review the podcast, like the YouTube video, subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. Over on the right side of your screen, you're going to see some other videos that we have here at youtube.com/footballguys. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos that we have here to offer. Thank you so much for tuning in.